Hello and welcome to the Xenothesis podcast. This is episode 49, in which we're covering chapters 1 and 2 from part 4 home of book 2 Adulthood-Rites of the Xenogenesis trilogy by Octavia E. Butler. My name is Richard Acton, and I'm joined back on Earth by my co-host
Michael Glinka. Hi everyone. Yes, we're finally back to the crazy wild Earth. Not on the ship anymore. It's a bit shame though, because I do wish that we spend a bit more time on this ship. Because, like when we had the first book, and obviously, Lilith was, living there before and preparing for the training to go back to Earth. We didn't get to know much about the ship itself, right? Like it was, we saw the observatory very briefly, and then, the telos and, the bit of description of but not much, We got to get to more know the ship more from Akin's perspective when he went for the training, but still, that's not like that.
I mean, I think I can kind of see why we don't know that much about the ship. I mean, for starters, it's not necessarily core to the narrative, but also, one of the things that works quite well for when you don't know the details of how a technology would practically work, but you still want to write hard sci-fi is like strategic ambiguity, right? True. If you just leave enough of it off screen, as it were, then, people can kind of plausibly backfill the gaps without you having to nail down every
yourself.
detail.
I mean, yeah. I understand. I'm sure there's, I wonder, if people have thought about it. Actually, now thinking about it, I wonder how the perspective and explanation of all the stuff has changed over the years or decades, since the books have been published. Because I think obviously those more versed in or who follow science more closely and development of science, I feel like it'd be interesting from their perspective how things would change, what explanation would be given by people of different ages to the science behind in the book.
Yeah. Actually, that's a point we might circle back to a little bit right towards the end in the context of a biological question. So maybe we should save any further discussion of that for then and jump into your predictions for chapter 1.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously back on Earth, Akin, is feeling a bit strange being back, after a year, I think, passed, or a bit, maybe more, maybe a bit less, on the sterile ship, now being back on the chaotic planet of Earth. But it's time to start making the preparations for the humans to become be able to be back to what they were themselves, or are they being able to reproduce by themselves without the presence of an alien species as such.
Yeah, it's a pretty big project he's got
on his back. I know, right? I mean, 20-year-old boy. I mean, nonetheless, he is going to live, I don't know, probably 200, 300 years at least, being an Oankali construct. But still, that's a big
not yet
project.
Formally an adult in Oankali understanding.
Absolutely. So let's get to it. Get to the chapter 1 summary, because I mean it's very, very short introductory chapter. So before anything happens, so the chapter 1 is dedicated to more of Akin thoughts and plans rather than anything happening particular. Being back on the wild Earth, Akin feels strange, like as a description, a profusion of life, almost frightening in its complexity. But the plan was to go to Mars, and Akin couldn't do anything yet because his training was not complete. We are told that it would be after he undergoes the metamorphosis, so becoming a fully fledged adult. And Tiguchak and Akin came back together on Earth, actually together with Dekyacht, who, as the book describes, simply attached himself to Akin, he must find him fascinating. It must find Akin fascinating, being the first male construct, and all those sort of things that we've learned from previous chapters, being like the sub-adult male and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like T is probably becoming male.
Yes. We are told that in the book that T's spending more time with Dichan, which in a way makes Akin a bit sad because he realizing that he's gonna become male. So there's not going to be more sort of as he describes it, the relationship between them is going to be sort of we will undergo sort of like the separation again, like they did when they were children, like the whole problem obviously. So now he's going to become male, so he's probably going to create his own family unit. So that's a bit sad, but at the same time it's good that Tikuchak at least made a decision of who he wants to become.
It's interesting how that will work out for them going forward, right? Because you've got Dekyat, who seems attached to Akin, but
yes.
T can no longer really be like part of
a family unit, yeah.
Their triplet, if they're going to have that. Yeah.
I mean, depends how we look at it, because I mean, it could be, I don't know how attached Dekyat is to Tikuchak. It could be that maybe they're not going to be I don't know. It is interesting to see what's going to happen. So, how it's going to be solved.
I suppose we don't really know. I mean, the Oankali are so like biologically focused, but and how they do their relationships and so on. So, but we don't really know much about reproductive units, right? So are there any like the equivalent of homosexual relationships that exist in this setup, or do they all have to be part of some kind of reproductive unit? Especially as there's kind of that anyway in the like 5-way groups that you have for the constructs.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
To be fair, actually, it's a good question, because we're told that Akin is going to be the wandering male, right? So the question is whether he will stay or he will be part of that family unit of, let's say, Tikuchak, Deka, and some odd and a female, and then maybe 2 humans, right? The 5, and then maybe Akin will go back and forth between maybe so make a child and then go away and type of thing.
No, we don't even really know whether or not it's common for Oankali to not be part of a family unit and not reproduce. Right?
We're not told that at all.
Yeah. I mean, given everything we have of their culture so far, it seems super important to them that they do that kind of thing. Yeah. But we don't really have any accounts of those that don't, if there are them. Yeah.
I feel like in the Oankali, I wouldn't pass it by them that this thing of not being part of a family unit, being even a thing in them. Like it could be that they are so biologically programmed, and if those that would not want to, I would feel like eventually they would be made to, like when they undergo metamorphosis or something. We know like when Dichan with his family found Dekyak, the sub-adult Uloi, for Tikuchak and Akin, I feel like things like that would probably be corrected, if you can call it as such, to make family units.
They do seem to. It's an odd mix, right? Because they seem fairly willing to respect individual choices, but at the same time, they also have a fairly opinionated seeming perspective on how you should conform to the.
I think that's a common theme throughout the whole book. We do respect your opinion, but.
At the same time, not so much.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll listen to you, Lilith, but we'll listen to you. What's the Uloi? Oh God, I forgot already the name of Lilith's Uloi.
Nikanj.
Nikanj. Oh God, God, forgive me. We'll listen to you, Nikanj. But it's just each time it's just a massive button, thrown in like a wrench.
Yep. I suppose also they must have some capacity to control their population quite effectively, right? So, if they're doing long interstellar voyages and stuff, they're going to have periods where they don't want substantial population growth. So they're going to have to keep that in check. And the Uloi are kind of in control of how much and how frequently they actually reproduce. So,
to be fair, Richard, when you think about it, like how... We don't really know how much time passes before like the birth of a child, and then how many years have to pass before they mature, right? We know for the human constructs, it is sort of following the average, maybe a bit older, but like the maturing stage in humans, adulthood and stuff like that. It's around 20-something years, right? But the
seems to be.
But for Oankali, the pure Oankali could be completely different. Like it could be, several decades before. I sort of imagine them like fantasy elves, basically. Like they live several centuries, so they don't have to reproduce so much because their livelihood is just if they populated like humans did. Very quickly, the resources would be finishing, quickly because how long they can live.
That's an interesting one because their society is so focused on that kind of like reproduction and making new mixes of genetic stuff from their kids, and yet at the same time they are going to be resource limited when they're traveling between the stars.
Exactly.
And whatnot. So it seems like they probably have like everything with the Oankali, they're quite flexible on their control over it, so they can have these periods where they've gone and landed on a planet where they can reproduce like crazy because they've got a massive resource abundance, get loads of experimentation, and then
and bear in mind that we also in first book we've learned about the stasis pods, so it might be the case of that they're just basically sitting in those pods for like several decades, centuries, who knows how long, completely not aging at all in this stasis of sleep. And then there's some Oankali in the meantime that take care of them, and then they swap places every so often when they travel through space. So I would say that possibly that and also the original Oankali, like we know that they're like centipede, like the Uloi from the Arcjay branch. They sound like those beings that like a lot of things like insects that will just crawl and then hibernate in their like little shells and then basically just stay there without changing at all. So
that's a good point. Actually, so we may have only been exposed to like a relatively narrow subset of Oankali society that is, particularly involved in this whole project of integrating with the new species. Maybe there's a bunch of others that are just doing their thing.
Absolutely, because we were told that they were made, their forms was changed to resemble more human-like, so that humans don't, encounter the, as we were laughing before, a centipede with tentacles, crawling slowly towards you. Like, I mean, like, come on, that's already horrifying. So,
and like a 7-foot tall one as well.
Be not afraid. We come in peace.
If this ever gets adapted to a visual medium,
I really don't know. Like it's going to be
that'd be a challenge.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, nowadays with the level of CGI, depending of course the funding of the such series would get. If it get enough funding for good CGI, I think it would be no problem. But let's see.
But I mean, I'm thinking that even today, it's going to have a pretty hefty CGI budget to be done well.
Yes, I'm pretty sure you'd have to do it like, and also the fact that they're all so varied, right? Like the variety between.
Right? You'd need a whole host of different models with really complicated animation work and stuff. It would be.
I mean, to be fair, if a company like Disney decided to do like they did with Star Wars when, you know, like nowadays The Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett, where they did the amazing job with the costumes for aliens and stuff like that. I would say that wouldn't be much of an issue.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I'm talking about a company
like
that's basically has more money than, you know, a lot of countries around the world. So hey.
Yeah. When Disney or Amazon can throw like $500 million at a TV series, then
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's maybe finish off this chapter because we're almost done here. So yeah, as we said, that he was spending time with Dichan, getting ready to become a male, but while Dekyat was left behind at Akin's family house, and the reason why was because Akin had another aim: visit his old friends, people he has not seen since the age of 3, the Phoenix people, and especially Gabe and Tate. And that's where the chapter ends, basically.
So returning to Phoenix
after almost 2 decades of not appearing there. Man.
Yeah.
And honestly, whenever like I knew that it might be coming, and he has to go to Phoenix, and I felt like, you know, but let's go to my chapter 2 prediction, because also, you know, like goes in there, because I thought that, you know, obviously he has to go to Phoenix to tell people about, you know, planet Mars becoming eventually a new place for them to settle. But you know, like I thought to myself, about their reactions. I guess like 2 decades of not seeing Akin. I mean, I wonder if they recognize him. Tate probably will be fine, but I wonder what Gabe will do. Like, knowing Gabe, anything is possible with that man. And I wasn't certain. Like, to be fair, I was inclining towards of Gabe doing something stupid, as Gabe does, but I wasn't certain if actually anything happens. So
okay, yeah, interesting.
So yeah, I guess let's get to it. Let's get to chapter 2. Yeah, because actually this was a pretty long chapter. But I guess they had quite a lot of things to catch up with. So
yeah, there's quite a lot to happen here.
So yeah, the chapter begins in Phoenix, or rather, a shabbier and a dirtier version of Phoenix that Akin remembered. You know, now there was, as Akin was approaching the city, the town, he could see the trash in the streets, some dead weeds, scrap of all different types of materials floating everywhere, and food waste rotting away on the streets. Some of the houses were obviously vacant, with some being partially torn down and some looking so broken as if ready to fall down. Akin walked down.
That's a big shift, right?
So yeah, it's been 2 decades, and it's. I mean, 2 decades. Initially, I thought that Phoenix will be prospecting quite fast.
Yeah, I mean, they were, at least initially, you know, they were on the up. They were having all their tools. They seemed to be
up and going. But then again,
building.
But then again, when Tino first came to the Law Village, he said that at the already time when he was a kid, already people were like, you know, leaving the village, and you know, some of them committed suicide, some of them disappeared forever, some of them may have gone to the Onkali villages. So to be fair, me saying that, from Akin's perspective, maybe it was more prospective village, but realistically Phoenix was on a decline all this time. It's just it accelerated more the last few decades.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting they managed to get kind of up as high as they did and then fall off that, right?
Yeah. I mean, Tino then explained, you know, like the first they had the aim, you know, like trying to rebuild the society, the world they used to do, and then people, eventually with time started losing hope, and that's basically, you know, like that if you don't follow, if you don't find means to continue fueling that hope, that's, eventually people will burn out. And that's obviously what we see here.
Yeah. I kind of got to a point of getting a bit stuck, right? They were all doing something and they made progress, but then they kind of hit a wall.
Yeah, basically a wall that you can't really bypass because you don't have the technology to do it. So yeah, Akin walked to the town openly, as he always did, because when he approached resisted settlements, that was probably the safest way to do it, although he had been shot once, though. And in his perspective, it wasn't problematic, more of a nuisance, but he ran away because Lilith told him that humans are not used to people healing super fast, especially after being shot. So, yeah.
Yeah, this was a bit of a callback to Lilith's experience with Joeseph.
Yeah.
After he was given the ability to heal, and then when he was attacked, I think with a
axe,
with machete, right? An axe. Yeah. And then he'd started healing that injury, and they killed him.
Yeah.
Because they were so unnerved by the rapid healing.
He's healing, yeah. So, yeah, that's. I when I first read it, I didn't make the connection. I completely forgot about it. But when you mentioned, it's like, oh yeah, that's the reason why.
Yeah, a bit of a personal trauma for Lilith showing through in what she's advising.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, to Akin's surprise, he saw rifles pointed at him. Years ago they were saying that there will be no guns in the town, but almost everyone now had one. Also, to his surprise, people were like drinking, or some of them were too drunk to notice him. Just walking around the streets. And here's a bit of excerpt from the book. Phoenix was dying. One of the drunken men was Macy Wilton, who had acted as father to Amma and Schacht. The other was Tensio Roybal, husband of Nessie, the woman who had wanted to amputate Amma's and Schacht's sensory tentacles. And where were Colina Wilton and Nessie? How could they let their mates, their husbands, lie in the mud, half conscious or unconscious? And where was Gabe? I mean, wow, honestly, this is pretty bad.
Stuff's really gone downhill.
Really, when people just walk around and drunk and stuff like that. I mean, I understand, but at the same time, it's sort of horrifying that how in a decade or so things can decline quickly. But yeah, Akin approached the house that was originally Tate's and Gabe's. As he did, a man with a gun came out on the porch and looked down at him. Who was it? Of course, Gabe. Initially, he didn't recognize him, made men to check him. Specifically, we are told it was Gilbert Sen, the same one whose wife, Anne, stood with the psycho Nessie. And Gabe told the men that the person in front of them was a king, and one of them pointed that he should have tentacles, meaning becoming an adult. So then Gabe asked directly to Akin, and gets the answer that he's not a full adult yet. And to give Gabe credit, he does something small and asks Akin to show his tongue, because obviously that was the only specific part of the body that was pretty peculiar and strange. And when he sees that sensory organ, he's like, oh yes, so it is you. And then when Akin extended his hand to shake, not only did Gabe shake it, but also grab him in the hug, excited to see the boy again. So
yeah, it's a little interesting actually how willing all the others were to kind of accept Gabe's acceptance of Akin. Right?
Yeah,
they just kind of slunk off, disappointed that they couldn't beat up Akin.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, once confirming that Akin is really Akin, Gabe calms the man around and takes him to the house. There we find Tate lying on a long bench against the wall with pain spread across her face. We are told that she fell down a cliff, and Yori, the doctor, was taking care of her. Akin remembers her, Yori, but to his surprise, he remembered that she said she would leave Phoenix if people made guns. Gabe sort of looks at him as like, oh, as if like surprised by Akin remembering that he did say that, she said that, but he retorts that, well, nowadays guns are necessary because of raids.
Yeah, that seems like
so I think that's
changed her mind after some incident.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the reasons why the Phoenix also declined, is probably the raids. Like, right, it's probably you have people raiding other, humans raiding other humans. Surprise, surprise. Instead of trying to stick together in the world they're in. And it feels to me that probably some people escaped, and probably escaped to the Oankali for safety. So that's probably one of the reasons everything is in decline. But yeah, surprisingly, Tate recognizes Akin, and almost immediately. He asks her, how did she fall? How did the fall happen, and what were her injuries? Initially, she's too mesmerized by Akin's presence, noticing he's not an adult yet. The Akin confirms, not yet, but he's back because he kept the promise to her. He never forgot about her. Her quick mind, her tendency to treat him like a small adult, the feeling she projected of being not quite trustworthy, just unpredictable enough to make him uneasy. But he liked her. He liked Tate though, and it troubled him how much she changed. She lost weight, her color, her scent, everything was wrong. She was so pale.
This is an interesting description of Tate, right? It's
I mean, pretty accurate, to be fair.
Yeah. It's pegs her quite well, actually.
I mean, at the time when she was waken up by Lilith, that's what we saw. Quick to respond, quick to think, unpredictable, but yet likable.
Yeah, just not very loyal, I think, in some ways. But,
I feel like if it wasn't for Gabe, it would be different.
Yeah, I think she kind of sided with Gabe significantly, didn't she? That was the kind of deciding factor early on.
Yeah.
Thought that was a better bet somehow, or at least for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gabe tells Akin how it all happened when she fell down the hill. He carried her back to the salvage site, which was a town of its own now, but they didn't have a doctor, so they had to bring her back to Phoenix. Akin knew that she was dying though, and what was surprising was the fall took place nearly 3 months before Akin's visit. She was suffering and no one would bring an Oloi to help her. Akin wanted to help, but was afraid of rejection, so for the time being he decided not to do anything about it. Instead, he tells her that he came back to say he kept his promise and that he found a place where humans can live and reproduce without the presence of an Oankali. The excited Gabe asks her where, and eventually Akin tells him simply, Mars. They will start terraforming the planet once Akin matures. And when Gabe asks, leave Earth to the Oankali? All over the Earth? Akin tells him yes, straight to his face. The man and the rest of the people needed to know that he's serious. Also, he needed to have a reason for Gabe to trust Akin with Tate. Although it did go through his mind that maybe Tate would not want to live the pointless life of struggle. But nonetheless, he goes and tells her that the reason why Oankali left him with them for so long is to learn about the humans. And the fact that he can give them Mars. Akin proceeds to tell them that they could live there, but it would have to be if they went there now, they would have to live underground because of the lack of the atmosphere protecting them against the UV and the lack of water on the surface. But eventually, he could make it warmer with vegetation.
Yeah, it's kind of actually they talk a little bit about they're going to use modified plants from the Oankali engineering to undertake the terraforming and make the planet viable. And they could even do this kind of in the lifetime of these humans, which is going to be something on the order of twice what they've already lived, which is already quite a long life for an ordinary human. So that's an impressive timescale for like substantial terraforming on Mars, right?
Yeah,
I've seen estimates as high as like 100,000 years.
I mean, to be fair, like Kurzgesagt had a video sometime recent about terraforming Venus, I think. And that was like several thousands of years of work. So it is really quite impressive feat to do it just quickly. But it's I sort of imagine it like, have you ever played Spore? The game, yeah. Do you remember that when you got to the space stage, you could get this terraforming tools, and like at the end, when you reach the core of the galaxy, you could get this wand that basically gives you unlimited. Like you press once, and basically the whole planet terraforms to level 3, so the highest level of world. So I just sort of imagine like that. They just like throw animals and plants on the surface of the planet and just like wait for it very quickly to spread out. And it's like, yep, it's ready.
Yeah, I mean the like when we've looked at what we would have to do to terraform Mars before, a substantial part of like the initial phase is warming it up enough that you could even start with something like plant life.
Yeah.
So it's creating like a more dense atmosphere and a runaway greenhouse effect to warm things up.
Yeah.
But like you still have the magnetosphere problem to deal with because you have cosmic radiation and solar wind that you need to deflect. So that's a whole other. How do you fix that one? If you can fix that problem.
I mean, yes, that's the issue. Because without that, I mean, even if you create atmosphere, it will not be kept in without any magnetic field. And with any solar flare, all of that atmosphere is gonna be like a little, cloud being blown by a wind.
It's easier for it to blow away in the if it's not got some shielding.
Absolutely.
Oh, the low gravity doesn't help with that either.
That's the other thing, yeah.
You'd have to like remelt the core or something, so you had a circulating molten iron core again to get the magnetosphere back, which is a whole other order of magnitude of problem.
Actually, yeah, so the video of Kurzgesagt, I think, was it someone else? I don't remember now. I've watched it, and actually you could do it without the warming up the core of the planet. In fact, you could do it with an object in the orbit. But how did it work? I do not remember. I need to after this for the reference, I'm sure I'll find this video. But it was really interesting solution, and it really blew my mind. I think it was Kurzgesagt who did it, but I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be very interested in what solutions people have come up with to the magnetosphere problem that doesn't involve actually having a liquid iron core planet.
I'll 100% find this video straight after for the references, because it was a really elegant solution that I never thought that would be possible, and it was surprising in fact. So I'll definitely find it because it's sort of like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Then know that you could do this type of thing.
Yeah, and the solutions to that problem and even more aggressive versions of it for cosmic radiation shielding of some form or another will be like a problem for spaceships going forward, as well as trying to terraform a planet. Right? You need a way of dealing with that, especially if you're traveling fast enough that even like ordinary stuff would hit you and it would be a problem because of your speed rather than its speed.
That's true actually. If you like little pebble floating in the space could literally like just go through you like sweet, like through butter.
Yep. If you're traveling at a substantial fraction of the speed of light and you hit a tiny speck of dust, you just because a lot of energy.
Exactly. But to be fair, going back to this sort of fragment we talked about, like I'm surprised that Akin noticed that Tate would not maybe want to live any more pointless life or struggle, right?
Yeah, it's there's this whole difference, it seems, between the Oankali and the human mindset on that stuff. Like Akeen seems, he's like remarking on the fact that he thinks he's probably, like, the Oankali wouldn't notice this. Like, his human side is what's permitting him to notice that Tate might not be wanting to carry on, right? To heal and keep going in this context where she's got nothing in particular to live for. And that's a general problem with many of the other humans in this world. It seems like the Oankali don't understand why the way they're treating the humans is like not going over well with the humans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, so the fact that, Tate possibly would rather succumb to her, injuries, rather than trying to heal, is probably for an Oankali, a being that's really, I would say, well, they themselves say that they value life over anything. Is probably a very abstract concept. So in society like that, I don't think things like suicidal depression would take place. It's just one of those things that it's so biologically ingrained in them to survive and live that it's crazy. Like, I don't think they wouldn't have any like sort of that type of those type of issues.
I mean, it's certainly possible, right, that you get that rate down to incredibly low, at least in circumstances they're likely to encounter.
Especially if an Oloy can make you feel great about at any time or any touch. So
yeah, that's a point, right? They've got kind of baked in antidepressants,
basically.
Yeah, but the actually, so there's a little quote from the book that I think is quite relevant to this point. I'll just read this out. It had occurred to Akeen that she might be weary of her long, pointless life, that he realized was something that would not occur to the Oankali. They would not understand, even if they were told. Some would accept without understanding, but most would not. So that the bit about them understanding it, I think, is the kind of interesting point, right?
Yeah.
They don't. If they didn't get it, then they wouldn't necessarily be okay with. I suppose the way that the humans might want to respond to the lack of hope for their future, right? Because they're just kind of, they've been left to live out the remainder of their life and effectively die out as the last members of their species, and that's it. There's no real prospect of them building another branch of human civilization. So it's pretty grim.
It is. I mean, but to be fair, I sort of try imagine to what the Oankali would do if they end up in the same position where they are stranded on the planet. There's maybe one or two of them left, and they're like, how would they feel, being not able to do anything about the fact that you're the last of your species?
Yeah, it might not necessarily be a biological thing, but rather a lack of cultural experience of this kind of a circumstance, right?
Yeah.
They just can't put themselves into the heads of the humans in their current kind of dead end of a position.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it could totally have a significant biological component. I mean, even in humans, right, things like depression and suicidality have substantial genetic components. And there are people out there who've endured all kinds of insane stuff and
it's
never really had serious follow through on suicidal thoughts. But there are also plenty of people who've had otherwise and outwardly appearing great lives who've killed themselves. So it's there's if you're a genetically engineering focused species and you've understood the mechanisms underneath that, you could probably dial the biological predisposition way down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it could also be a cultural thing. So
yeah,
as usual.
Nice
nature nurture, complexity exploration.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept that we don't know how a very alien species would react to. So it's one of those things, as we said in the very beginning, that it's one of those left untold for us to fill in the gaps. But yeah.
Although, Tate now kind of seems to immediately get her, interest and will to live
immediately
back, right? In this next section here. When she hears about the Mars thing, she's like, okay, I got something I might still be able to do here.
Yeah. So let's get to it then. So as Richard said, Gabe asks him how would they going to, do it, and basically Akin tells him that it would be with modified plants first and then with modified animals. And here's a bit of an interesting part of the conversation between straight from the book. The Oankali have used them all before to make lifeless planets livable. Oankali plants, Gabe demanded, not Earth plants. Akin sighed. If something the Oankali have modified belongs to them, then you and all your people belong to them now.
Yeah.
And what he gets is just silence from Gabe. It's just like, yep, yeah. Gabe, know your place.
Stop being a plant racist, Gabe.
At least for now, we get a silence from Gabe. But Akin continued telling them that the modified organs would work much faster than the ones on Earth. He wants to work fast so that the humanity can make children now, even though their lives have been extended. Gabe says that they almost lost everything and now they're gonna lose their world, but Akin counters that with not everything. They can take anything they want, because the plant life from Earth will be added to it once it's hospitable enough to support it. Some plants will obviously need some indoor plantation, but many of the wild flora should survive. Gabe asks Akin then if it's possible within their lifetime, and Akin says yeah, because if they keep themselves safe, they should live, as Richard said, twice as long as they already had. So it's quite, as we discussed, it's pretty fucking fast to do terraforming in maybe a century or so.
Yeah, it's a pretty aggressive time frame.
Yeah, depends on how many people, how many beings help Akin, and how quickly they develop something like this. But yeah.
Now, I suppose with a lot of these biological things, right? If they've got a bunch of organisms and stuff that can start growing, then they, exponential growth and whatnot. They don't need all that many people to actually work on the project. You just set a bunch of stuff loose and it goes and does its thing.
Yeah, that's true.
No.
That's true. No. So yeah, Tate surprises Akin, says that she won't live more than another month, and if he could bring help to her, Gabe immediately protests, but Tate shuts him there, saying she will die and asks if he believes Akin. Gabe tells her that kids lie, but Tate shuts him again, saying that men also lie, and asks if he thinks she should die. Poor Gabe in a way. I don't feel sorry for him, but he's poor Gabe. Gabe of course says no, so she tells him to get any help possible because Yori has given up on her already. And he finally agrees to tell Akin to help her, but Akin surprises both of them, saying he can do that. He can do it what the Uloi can. Gabe immediately says no, you're not an Uloi. How can you heal anyone? But Akin responds that he was taught. His teacher was an Uloi. Of course, he can't do everything that Uloi can, but he can help organs heal. Of course, it will not be as efficient with an Uloi. Obviously, there will not be as much enjoyment, but Akin can do the healing.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's he's saying he can't make it pleasant for Tate to experience. He has to just knock her out to do it. And I'm pretty sure Tate's like, I prefer it that way. Thank you very much. It's like, so I'll take the weird enjoyment thing and pass on that.
Yeah, I don't want
unconsciousness.
to. Yeah, I don't want to develop a Pavlov's response to pleasure, almost dying to pleasure. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think it seems like it's one of those things the Oankali also don't quite get about the humans, they're like, but this is much more enjoyable. Why do you want this? And
yeah,
like,
I'm just gonna jump off the
"Ah,
cliff to break my leg. Oh, Kali, Ola is coming to help me. Oh, so bad.
Yeah, it's just like, you know what? I'll take the fix and the unconsciousness, and we'll leave the weirdness. No.
But yeah, Gabe, being Gabe, says something now that almost makes Akin to stand up to square with him. You know, you can still stink, can't you? But Akin suppresses that urge and just stares down the man. You know, eventually Gabe asks if Tate wants to do it, and Tate responds, "I'm dying. Of course I want to." And you know, Gabe does the Gabe things, you know, and pretends to be tough, stares at Akin, waiting for him to start healing Tate. But Tate tells him just simply, fuck off, just leave and leave Akin alone and let him do his thing, and not enter until she's healed.
Yeah, I got this kind of weird machismo thing going on between the two of them.
It's just like, yeah, Gabe, just honestly, just leave, boy. Just leave it now.
Yeah, it's like, go stand outside.
Yeah. And no,
oh dear.
Finally, Gabe gives in and says he's leaving, and as he is, Akin tells him that any interruption could kill her, so he should guard the door and not let one in. Tate asks if Akin needs, asks Akin if she needs to do anything, and Akin only says that he needs to use the tongue so it will look like he's biting her, and you know, so obviously he needs to lie down beside her to get more comfortable and to start the process. And also so that the connection doesn't get interrupted, because that could cause harm to her. And before they start, Akin asks Tate if Gabe won't interfere, and she says that he learned a long time ago not to do things like that. And the chapter ends. It's gone.
So Akin's going to look like a vampire.
Basically, yes. Basically, yeah.
For this section.
The chapter ends.
Actually, there is some... one of Octavia's other short series of books is actually vampires.
She might have had the idea from there, like when she wrote, it's like, oh, actually, vampires could be a good idea.
I've not read those ones. They're on my list.
Oh, okay. What's the title? Do you know the title? Or at least the name of the
I can't remember which ones. No, I've read the Earthseed books, but I can't remember what the title of the vampire ones is off the top of my head now.
That's fine.
The parable books. Those are the ones with Earthseed. But yeah, the rest of her works I've not finished.
Okay. So yeah, the chapter ends with Akin saying that he can't put her to sleep like an Ula would, so he needs to guide her body to do it by itself. He then connects to her to find her organs injured. You know, some bones fractures, the Huntington disease activated again. Strained and bruised ligaments in her back, dislocated disc in her neck, badly broken kneecap, damaged both kidneys. Akin was horrified and wondered how far did she fall. But anyway, Akin started working her, first stimulating the enzyme to turn off the Huntington's disease gene. He couldn't change the gene or trick her body to do something, because that would have to be left to the Onkali or to an Oloi to do that, and that's where the chapter ends. You know, he starts healing her. But yeah, it's crazy how messed up her body was, and she must have fell extensive injury. She must have fell far, like really far.
I'm pretty. You can get kidney damage from a fall. I think.
I mean, if you fall on your back and you squish them, then yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it is tissue. Like, you know, it can rip. So you rip enough of it, and you know it won't heal. Like, I mean, you know, maybe you would heal some minor stuff, but anything more substantial than that, like, you know, if any of the connections of the glomeruli or something like that gets broken, then that's it. You know, like, that's why kidneys are so important, that, like, you know, you take care of them, and that's why we need to, that's why we have two, just in case.
Yeah. And they're if they're not working, then everything else stops working pretty quick. Right?
Basically.
Important functions. So the Huntington's thing, this is what I was alluding to right at the beginning, about how understanding changes a little bit over time. So we spoke a little bit about Huntington's before, but we didn't really speak about like the timeline of its discovery.
No, we haven't. We only talked about the cause and of it, but not actual like flow of the disease.
But not even just like the life history of the disease, but rather how. So like the history of when it was discovered. Right, it was first described in I think 1872.
Okay.
Like formally, and then they kind of got a rough location of the gene in 1983. With conventional genetic mapping methods, and then they got a more precise mapping in 93. So when the book was written, this one was published in 88. So we would have known like
about
roughly where the gene was and that it was a single gene cause, but we didn't have a precise mapping of it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till like 96, 97 that we got a bit of an understanding of how the triplet repeat expansion mechanism that we talked about, we talked about this before, works. So at this point, what Octavia wrote about turning on an enzyme to suppress the Huntington's disease gene could well have been a reasonable understanding of it
at the time.
Our current understanding of the mechanism, it is that if you just turn the gene off, then you wouldn't necessarily prevent some of the damage that it's doing.
True.
If it's a mutated form, right? The understanding now is still a bit unclear, but a substantial part of the mechanism is thought to relate to protein aggregate formation. So as the gene is expressed and the misfolded protein fragments that result from it having this kind of extended repeat section in the middle get formed, they kind of form these aggregates and impair the function of the cells that they're in.
Basically,
so you need something to clear the protein aggregates, not just turn off the gene, because you've got damage accumulating from that. Plus, Huntington itself, its normal function is needed. In at least through embryonic development. I don't know if anyone's done a study where they have a promoter that has it on during development and then off once you reach adulthood, but it is at the very least embryonic lethal. So if you knock it out completely, it can't develop.
To be fair,
so it's doing something fairly important.
It's pretty crazy thinking about like our cells have mechanism to clear out unwanted proteins and like if anything, like protein degradation. That's like, oh, this is misfolded, cool, just send it over to for degradation and recycling, right? And yet we do have diseases that basically like misfolded proteins be created, but nothing's done about them, or at least they slowly accumulate more and more and overwhelming the cell's clearing system, I would say, probably. So
it seems that they managed to kind of evade whatever it is that detects the misfolded proteins, or maybe they just overwhelm it. There's a sufficient volume of them produced.
If I remember correctly from my biochemistry degree, is that certain amino acids, once the protein is folded, should not be exposed as such. There's protein complexes that detect certain amino acids, for example, from the active sites that
a lot of it is hydrophobic amino acids.
So they shouldn't be detected on the surface of the protein. That's why. And if they are, then the protein is assumed misfolded, and they just send it over to degradation because something went wrong in the folding process.
But what you end up with aggregates is like the surface of the aggregate may still have quite a lot of polar amino acids of one kind or other, but the bulk of it is still comprised internally mostly of hydrophobic amino acids, which is that's part of normal protein folding, right? The things that cause proteins to have their shape is that hydrophobic amino acids will be inside them, and so that they can be effectively away from the water, both from charge and from actually entropic effects drive that quite a lot. The amount of free energy that is changes in the way that the water molecules are arranged produces quite a substantial quote unquote force from entropic effects that cause hydrophobic tails to be inside a protein structure, which is not really a kind of force that we experience at our scale. Anthropic effects are much more dominant at that scale.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so it's sort of so going back to that conversation, yeah, it sort of shows that it was a plausible explanation, but obviously things change, and now we learn we know way more about the cells and DNA in general and genes, that we are aware there's way more of things that can happen that you could potentially do to control those things, but I would say it still stands. I would say it's still a feasible explanation to this issue, like, you know.
Yes, it's perfectly reasonable, as written at the time. You might want to tweak it ever so slightly if you were writing it these days, but not by much. And it's like, I think we often kind of forget quite how rapidly understanding of biology and biotechnology and stuff has changed, right?
Yeah.
It's I mean, the Human Genome Project was 2000. It's only like 20 years ago when that finished.
Man, yeah.
Like before that, you know, like early biochemistry stuff is kind of like 60s when that was big, and then you've got like real genetic mapping not really getting much serious work done at scale beyond like individual gene mapping locations beyond like the 80s. And then, you know, into the 90s you start getting sequencing tech, and that's still pretty small scale until you start doing whole genome maps. And then, you know, it's all post 2000 when you get a whole proliferation of other organisms' genomes, and so it's been like, you know,
and also development of things like development of epigenetics, or field of epigenetics in general, and you know, all of those things are like really like accelerated the understanding.
Some of the methods that I think don't get as much credit is like all of the crazy advances in microscopy technologies, and all the stuff that you can do with like fluorescent dyes and fluorescent protein markers and immunohistochemistry stuff that you can combine with microscopy, and then things like cell sorting technologies.
Oh yeah,
and,
absolutely.
Proteomic methods, lipidomic methods, all that stuff.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, nowadays in pathology, right? Like, you know, hematoxylin and eosin stains are still a gold standard, right? But like, for those who don't know, hematoxylin is a extract from a tree, right? It's being used for like, I don't know, like a century now. And it's still being used because it's a good stain and people have been trained how to interpret it. But like, we do have methods, like if you want to like visualize a singular gene in a cell, we can now create probes that will literally just detect that sequence and be like, yep, that's it, and there you go, it shines, right? Like, and we can literally almost pixel wise detect the cell, you know, the gene expression and stuff like that. So yeah, you know, there's the amount of like how quickly the technology accelerated in like the last 3-4 decades is crazy.
And like a lot of that comes from combining a lot of those classical methods with modern techniques for scaling it and modern informatics methods. So just like taking the understanding of how these staining methods work and then just like combining them with a bunch of other techniques, and you get all these sort of additive effects.
Yeah, absolutely.
Putting these things together.
I mean, to be fair, like for me, this all sort of reminds me of like when Blu-ray or HD disc DVDs were created, right? What they did was very simple, right? It wasn't even just like a lower wavelength lasers. It was using a laser, like a cylinder-like laser, to reduce, that was canceling out the original laser, to sort of reduce the resolution of the final result. So if you imagine, like, if it's let's say you have a centimeter, like a dot of a laser, and then you shine a centimeter also in diameter, but with a hole inside of it, another laser that cancel out, you end up with a spot in the middle that's much, much smaller. And that was a very simple solution. And yet the technology suddenly, like, you know, instead of 700 megabytes of, you know, data stored on DVD or on CDs, and maybe like 2-3 gigabytes, if I remember, like DVDs. Now you had like 70 gigabytes disks, available for you, for transferring data. So, and that was used for in science as well. Like that's how a lot of like microscopy also works. Like we are limited with the size of the light resolution, but obviously you can use electrons. But that requires special preparation. But if you want to do like light microscopy, you can there's this method utilized to actually reduce the resolution and increase the increase the resolution.
Super resolution microscopy, right? That's they managed to do light microscopy, but at a resolution that is higher than the wavelength can resolve.
Exactly.
Magic and trickery.
Exactly. It's it's crazy how sometimes a simple solution. And to be fair, when things are created, right? Like we remember the names of those big people who, like Nikola Tesla or like Edison. Although I don't like Edison, but for all this like DC and AC electricity and stuff like that. But but things get scaled down for like things, or like there's new innovations that increase the efficiency of things. Like if somebody increases efficiency by 10, you usually remember their name. But like if you increase something that can, just by a bit, but it's like necessary, people don't know those people's name, but like it's equally important. Like it's crazy. Like that step from like big steps are relatively easy to make, but usually are more remembered by people, whereas that tiny little fraction steps that are like much more difficult to make, but for maybe
I think it's sometimes difficult or easy by different metrics, right? In some cases the big steps are kind of they require like a creative leap.
Yes, they do. No, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't take away for the achievements of those people. No, that's not what I mean. But like sometimes the like like going from a resolution of like 0.001 microns to like going down by a tenth is a leap in itself, and much harder step to do than going in between.
Yeah, there's a lot of trying to think, hard work, right? Like old school hard work of the grinding away at it for ages, and being very meticulous about it to figure out the exact correct way of doing this, to engineer it just so, right? That's a different species of hard work to the making the creative leap, but still a hard. And there's a lot of creativity in. Even in many of those smaller innovative leaps, like combining two things that hadn't previously been thought to be combined, to get
it's that's what science is, and that's what you do in PhD. You fucking cry because things don't work, and you keep grinding at it until sort of you get some sort of answer, and then you realize that you just made a little tiny baby step forward to something that
Well, I mean, a lot of that is kind of it falls a bit more into the category of engineering than science per se, right? There's a lot of overlap in some of those things, at least between what Kuhn called ordinary science and engineering, whereas like Kuhn's paradigm shifts are a bit more in the kind of abstract creative process type realm. It depends how you think about the different constituent components of doing the science.
But
I think actually last episode, I think we used the phrase "the science" about something, right? Which we probably shouldn't do, because like the notion that there is the science like as a monolith.
That's true. We shouldn't be saying that, because I mean, it is a method of thinking of developing things. Not it's more of a technique, I would say, rather than a thing.
It's a process.
Yes,
right? It's not a thing. It's a verb, not a noun. No, and it's an ongoing.
I think the big problem here is that in schools we're talking like, oh, what subjects are you doing? Like, oh, biology, chemistry, physics, blah blah. Oh, you're doing science. It's never treated. we use science in the wrong aspect here. It needs to this whole idea of like it should change. We should change it more to be like, yeah, this is more of a process than a thing. Biology, chemistry.
Yeah, we take it a bit too literally, right?
Yes.
We teach it in the sense of scientia knowledge rather than like the process by which you acquire knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. We teach the stuff that we have learned using the method, not the
the process how we acquire that method
approach. Right. Yeah. It's not the how did we figure this stuff out, and that's the thing that you really have to emphasize when it comes to understanding what science as a process is. Right. The method by which you find out new stuff. Yeah. It's not it's the process by which you filter out all the bad ideas. And anyone and their dog can come up with an explanation. It's the question is, how is it a good one?
Yes. Did you
No.
Good point. I need to be fair, I do fall into that trap often myself. To be fair, it's hard.
It's a common semantic.
It's hard to fall out as well, because when your whole childhood also always like you use the word in a specific way, and when you finally learn that's what's proper meaning, it's hard to shift in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's an unfortunate gap in the way that we teach about this stuff, because it means you have it's a common source of misunderstanding in the popular culture, right? And even in academic criticisms of science, there's kind of a misunderstanding of what it is in the abstract. Right? There's and even when people talk about the sociology of science, they think about it in terms of the kind of the tribal thinking of individual groups of scientists, which they're tribal, they're as human as anyone else. But the abstract project of science is aspirational, right? It's not a thing that exists in the concrete reality in its idealized Platonic form, right? It's a thing that people are trying to do.
Yes, absolutely.
And, like the way of you often get critiques of science, which are actually not critiques of the epistemological component of science, but of the sociological component of science, like how science is practiced by people, not the underlying process itself. And people will conflate them. They'll think of a critique of science, meaning scientists, as a critique of science, meaning the process, right? And nothing has come close to doing anything as useful as the process, and in any other domain of like epistemological approaches that can actually yield good results, right? That's science is as a method is the pinnacle of epistemological success. But as individuals and as people who practice science and processes and societal institutions that are involved in communicating and doing it, that's a very different thing, right? They have been variously fallible and wrong and biased, but the process of fixing that is not dismantling them and criticizing science per se. It is doing better science and organizing social institutions in such a fashion that they are better aligned to the underlying method.
Absolutely.
Because that's it's the way you find out new stuff, right? That's what it is.
In a way, it's the most efficient way of finding out stuff, right? Like it.
Well, the efficiency is dependent on the social institutions to some significant degree, right?
Well,
but, I mean,
yes, but no, because it depends on how well trained in the process of understanding how apply the methodology of scientific process is a person, how well versed are they, right? Because as you said, you can have people who like you give them a problem and they just throw random solutions at them, and then you have a person who has been trained to think in a specific way, like, setting up hypotheses and looking at the variables, what way to apply it, each step of analysis, at things, and then coming out correct conclusions based on the results, and then being able to then verify the results by someone else who could go and then take away the analysis by you, and then be like, okay, we've looked into it, there's some maybe gaps in your understanding or something, but overall it's something. It's not just like throwing a wrench at the machine and hoping it's gonna be fine. You find a solution to it. So
it's the sort of the lack of a mechanism for falsification, right? The lack of a mechanism for throwing out a theory if it doesn't line up with reality is what basically every other epistemological frame lacks, right? There are various versions of how we can figure out what the truth is, but none of them have quite the same sort of ratchet mechanism for improving understanding.
I mean, to be fair, if I can, like, it feels to me that this is the biggest problem with science in general, right? Because I mean, it's the best thing we have. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, you can tell by if you look around the world, like all the technology we have, it's thanks to science and engineering. But there are cases in the world, in life, that science was wrong, or rather that the approach to things, the observations were wrong simply because, and some people stuck to their beliefs, right? And they were correct. Like, for example, the whole thing with ulcers and being caused by viruses, right? Situation where we mentioned before, like, that they are caused by viruses, and the man had to, the researcher who did that proved it by actually getting himself, Well,
so this is one of those things where, like, it's to say the science is wrong is to say the scientific consensus was incorrect about a thing, which is always true, right? The scientific consensus will almost always be wrong about a thing, at least at some point, when a new understanding comes along. Right? That's just the way that works, right? The way that you get less wrong about your understanding of things is you apply the scientific method iteratively to new stuff, right? If you're treating the scientific consensus as dogma, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, you have to apply skepticism to it and make the predictions of the current model pay their rent, right? They have to actually be able to predict what's going on in the real world, and when they start to be in error about what they're predicting, then you have to correct them, right? It has this baked-in self-correcting mechanism if you're applying it right, but but frequently enough we fail to apply it correctly. But there's this kind of attitude from some people that you should just give up on the whole project, because you can't get to, like, no. It's like, just because you can't get to the capital T truth doesn't mean you can't, like, approach it. You can still get closer to it.
Absolutely.
Like, it's no. And it might not be like a perfectly smooth asymptotic curve that approaches the truth. It has, some jagged bits in it, but, like, you're still getting closer for the most part.
Absolutely. But quick question: how did we get to this conversation? I generally am.
I don't know. It's probably just on my mind. The current state of communication of scientific problems is.
I mean, to be fair, I think it's, we get tired. I guess that's what also Rich is probably saying. Like, when you hear TVs and mainstream and media, be like, when you see people going like, but you could be wrong, to a scientist, and you're like, yes, absolutely, that's the whole point. I could be wrong, and I will be wrong eventually at some point, because the knowledge will change. But at this very moment, this is what we have. This is what, and we need to upload. And I think the biggest problem with this is that I'm not gonna go there, because I'll wind myself up.
Yeah, I think there is some validity to some of the criticism, right? We have had some institutional failings that need addressing to get us better at actually doing the process of science better. But like that's my concern comes with people who express skepticism of like science in general, and they seem to be meaning the actual process. And like no, you really don't want to do that. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater if you do that. But that's we've had that tangent.
Yeah, we had this tangent. Yeah. So yeah, I guess let's finish off here and go to my chapter 3 prediction.
Sure.
So. Obviously, now this was coming. Like, I it has to be happening. Something in this line that as Akin is working on healing Tate, something indeed interrupts them because obviously they were talking about interruption. They were talking about some raids. So I feel like since Gabe told us that they need guns now because of raids, maybe a mistimed raid. Like Akin is just lying there trying to heal Tate, and suddenly there's something happening, and Gabe's trying to wake them up, but he can't. Something type of thing because there's shooting or something those lines. So I feel like something is building up, but what exactly I'm not certain.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean,
So some kind of some problem arises in Akin's attempt to heal Tate.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that Gabe is not flipping stupid enough to like just go and interrupt Akin. Like, I mean, I have zero respect to that person. Okay, and you can probably tell through all of those who listen to this podcast probably can tell already. But even I hope that he's not, a amoeba enough to actually do something stupid like that.
Okay.
I feel like it's going to be some sort of like raid, yeah.
Yeah, something external to disrupt.
Yeah. So yeah, great. I guess that's it, right, for today.
Yeah, I think so. That's
well then. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. We are Xenothesis. You can find all the places we upload our podcast on xenothesis.com. I was Michael Glinka.
I was Richard Acton.
Goodbye.
Bye.